here's the lineup for today. So we've got a couple things from Jimmy. We've got a couple things from the Jameses, and then I'll be covering for Salvia on some work around UX. So again, lots and lots of work accomplished, certainly behind the scenes on the cloud enablement, the documentation, merging a lot of the great work from Bargreen and many of the other community members as well. And so this one's going to be a little bit different in that respect, but a lot of good progress on those enabling pieces and kind of in timing for our general availability. And so I'm going to kick things off and start with Mr. Kalkoven, who's going to walk us through some improvements to documentation.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. Can you guys see my screen? Awesome.
Sure can.
So the first thing I wanted to present was documentation for routing. This is inside the UI components area. Basically, it's a conceptual topic that talks about how routing is done in PWA Studios. I know there was a lot of questions about how our approach to routing, so this breaks it down to how it works and all the components involved. You guys can read through that. Next test I did this sprint was deprecating some docs in the project directories. There were a lot of issues with people going to the actual in the docs folders in each of these projects and seeing out-of-date documentation. So what we've done is deprecated it and added links to the proper dev docs pages in them. And that should help with keeping one source of truth for documentation. We also removed the build pack setup instructions that was highlighted on the front page. We replaced it with a contribution section. In the meantime, since those docs were no longer relevant due to the way the project has changed, so that's been removed from the site. Another update, we've moved the Venia sample data into its own topic. In the setup, since Venia no longer requires you to set up your own Magento instance, we've removed that into its own topic here that just focuses on installing sample data. So that's streamlined the setup installation, so you can just follow this without having Magento installed anywhere. And we've run through this ourselves multiple times from Andrew, and it follows pretty well. And then the last change is another conceptual topic that explains the difference between a Magento theme and a PWA storefront. And that can be found in the overview here. It basically goes into it explains the differences between the theme and storefront and how development is different for each of them. It's a good overview. Even if you're not familiar with Magento development, you can see where the decisions we made were made as a reaction to how development is done with Magento themes. And at the bottom is a table of just a bunch of links for the technologies that each approach uses. So that is my update for documentation for this sprint. Any questions?
Excellent. Well, I think that's great. So we've got a couple updates from Jimmy and James here, and so I want to give you guys an update to share maybe some of the work on merging. James, I know we also landed Webpack 4 as well, and so some of these things may not be as visual as others, but did you guys want to share any updates on that one with the community?
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Well, sorry. Go for it, Jimmy.
Okay. So I will. I'll share a screen real quick just so we can take a look at what we going on here. So this is a list of all of our open pull requests, which we have great velocity now. The PRs are coming in faster than we can actually close them. But a like Eric said, we landed two major ones at the beginning of the sprint, which were related to Webpack 4 and then related to routing. And so that's doing enablement of community. We can see that back here. And so since then, we've also merged a ton of PRs from the community and from EPEM and from ourselves. And then we have a few more landing real soon here, sitting inside the open. We've done major review, and we're just waiting for a few remaining blockers on checkout options from Bargrain, pagination from Bargrain, and the search page. And then we've got some of these other EPEM PRs coming in soon, including order confirmation page, and the purchase history. So coming up next week, we're going to see a lot of work starting to be merged.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy. No, I know, yeah, we a lot there, but we've got the enablers in place for that one, so appreciate the update. Any questions or comments on those? All right. Mr. Zetland, any updates on your front? I know that you spent quite a bit of time on the Webpack piece, which I think was the key update.
Shall we do?
Yeah.
Shall we do a little bit of a Webpack demo? Just a second here. Let me see if I can do a bisect. Yeah, I'll just go here. So let's do a little compare and contrast. I'm actually going to go ahead and do a checkout, but I don't want to show off code. That should all be fine. So what I will do is share my screen to show a little bit about how Venio works now and about how our Webpack build works now and some of the things that it enables. Not all of these things are not all of these things have hit the main line, but Webpack 4 is a huge change. Can you guys see my my Chrome?
We can.
Okay, so This is Venia right now in its stable release, which is deployed right out of the release 2.0 branch as there emerges. It was briefly broken because Webpack 4 has a very new build architecture and bundling architecture, and so there are still some kinks to work out. But I'm going to go ahead and figure out all the storage for it, although I think it's worth observing that the storage is under 1 megabyte. You clear the site data, and then just to be on the safe side, you close the tab as well. Observe that the JavaScript is coming down in sort of an odd collection. The vendor bundle comes down first. It's pretty small, 37 kilobytes. The client bundle is a little larger. It's 106 kilobytes, and that's what contains most of the underlying libraries that everything uses, like React and Apollo, etc. But we have a hard limit of about 106 kilobytes, something like that, in the intelligent configuration of the split chunks plugin. So right about that size, Webpack decides that the client is going to be broken up into another asynchronous chunk. So even the core functionality that is statically imported is still being progressively loaded. This is something that Webpack does for us automatically. You might also notice that there is a named chunk for the CMS page root component. There used to be a plugin that detached the root components and their dependencies as separate chunks by kind of hacking the internals of Webpack. And we're doing that a little differently now. Let's take a look at this. Uh-oh. The absolute URLs are supported. You know what? I need to change my end file. Sorry about it. think. Okay, node fetch. Yeah, that should have worked. Give me just another minute. Okay.
Hey, James, do you want me to cover the Sally update while you take a look at that to give you a minute?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Because I think it's potentially this is a very, very cool demo that just broke, and I bet the fix is quick. So I'll go ahead and unshare if you want to talk about Salmi stuff, and then we'll come back to me.
Yeah.
If anything,
Yeah, absolutely.
This is nowhere near what happened to Surma, but at Chrome Developer Summit, so I'm still feeling good. Stopping sharing, and feel free to talk about Salmi's updates.
Yeah, absolutely. So Salmi had a couple updates. She's actually out on vacation, well-deserved in South Africa this week, but working on a couple things relative to kind of those last and kind of final finishing touches that we want to have for Venians, and namely the splash experience. So looking at what that animation looks like, but also in the future, potentially what that page loading experience might look like, similar to the bars that you might see go across the page. And so I think what we decided, and I know that Salmi had worked with several of you here, including Jimmy and also some of the Bar Green folks on that, is really just a simple splash kind of loading experience that you'll see. Again, part of it's because it's a core requirement of Google Lighthouse. You need that as that initial experience, but then also it's just good practice, and it's going to replace those fetching and loading blocks of text that you'll see, which were always intended to be placeholder from the beginning. So what you'll see here is just a basic animation that we'll share. So give me a second, and I'll pull that up here. So it doesn't look, it's not going to take more than a minute or so to show it, but that's really the intent, and there's a story related to that, and this also feeds into some of the related work on JavaScript not available and things like that really again are not only core Lighthouse pieces, but also part of that kind of continuous user experience, whether it be offline in limited form or online as well. So I'll show you what we got. Take a look at this. So very subtle transition from black and white into that. So
sorry,
again.
Oh.
Yep.
I don't know if it's just me or if it's anyone else, but your screen froze for me.
I don't know. The guys in the room are saying that it looks good. It may be you, sir.
Okay, it's just me. Don't worry about it.
No worries. But that's really it. And so again, very, very subtle. The team went back and forth based on what's possible, but what is the better experience that looks at this in an upcoming PR relative to, again, just simply replacing some of the debug work we had on fetching and loading there, but something is a little bit more elegant as you would expect. So that was it. She also worked on a couple of things relative to some continuous research on things, and also worked on a few items on stock photography. So now being part of the Adobe family, we do want to replace some of the work that we did in the concepts with royalty-free imaging, and so we want to also potentially look at and this is something the EPOM team is looking at, potentially a demo of the CMS functionality, something real simple on the homepage to kind of show how that might work. Again, for the purposes of having a workable example that could be extended by a real project for that. And so she worked on a couple things behind the scenes there, all of which, of course, is part of our Zen Hub board as well. But that was Samiam. So any questions or comments before we switch gears back to Mr. Zetlin?
Does the grayed out indicate offline, and then when it's colored, it's normal? Is that the?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. All right. I will stop sharing. Mr. Zetlin, how are things?
Oh, I've got it going. I know that seems like a huge surprise, and I, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, for reasons that I think should be obvious, I would not have bet on this working. But here we are. So we were here. This is the Webpack 4 version that is currently live, magentovania.now.sh. This is where we were at. You guys can see, right, that the total amount of just JavaScript that is downloaded is only 149 kilobytes of the 1.5 megabytes that have been transferred, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So same functionality with a little bit less over here, because at this tagged stage we didn't have a lot of pull requests merged, and we didn't have the accessory thumbnails. But this is the Webpack 3 version. Notice that the vendor bundle is 542 kilobytes, and the total JavaScript payload is 860 kilobytes. Notice also that there is one extra chunk that is 15K, comes off the CMS side, and that they're all loading synchronously. Once again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now look over here in comparison. 2 of those chunks loaded asynchronously in parallel, these 2 chunks loaded in parallel. So the difference maybe is the most visible when you look at the actual timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and record a page load and take a look. Now, those gigantic yellow bits are scripting time, just the evaluation of script. And the load time, which is pretty insignificant because most of those things were cached. As a matter of fact, it'll be better if I clear the site data and do it again. Let's just do this. And there we are. So observe that the loading time, the scripting time, the rendering time, I guess they're pretty okay. I think I did not manage to disable cache properly, but all of that area here is JavaScript, which, when evaluating, is going to block the main thread, and it evaluates in a way that stops the scrolling and the user response and delays a metric from the real world that we like to call first input delay. That's the Webpack 3 version of the load, and it's leveled off pretty fast because this is sort of a version of the shop that doesn't have a lot of the functionality. Now let's take a look over here. Now I'm going to again delete everything in the application. And run a performance audit. Oops. I don't know what that was. Done. So observe that those giant yellow chunks are spread further out over time. So that means that there is a lot more space in between for the UI to be responsive. This is just the beginning of the application. There's one little spike during the initial render of the client, and it takes place between 2,600 milliseconds and 3,000 milliseconds. Compare over here when there is a lot of JavaScript being evaluated for almost half a second. Here, the deepest JavaScript point occurs in less than a quarter of a second, and that's the difference between something feeling good and not. Webpack 4, swapping it in, resulted in no code changes to the actual Venia components beyond some build stuff in the way that root components operate. It was essentially an invisible change to the folks making the pretty UIs. And we are super, super happy with it. It has made the folks doing initial implementations in the UK and in Brazil and in Spain and in Argentina really, really excited. Hopefully that at least gives you some numeric support for why Webpack 4 was so great. There are a lot more cool things we could talk about, but I will give it up for questions.
Yeah, that perf is awesome.
It is.
Yep, agreed. Awesome stuff. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now, I will and actually share a tiny bit of source code. Now, I didn't used to have this rule, but we had to set it up after sharing too much source code in these demos. Optimization. Oh, yeah, that's right. I need to check out the other one. All right. Now I'm sharing my screen here. And the way that optimization works in Webpack 4 is a little different. Instead of adding a Commons chunk plugin, there's no such thing as a Commons chunk plugin, whose whole logic was just let's find the common stuff and pile it into a vendor bundle that's 500 kilobytes in size. There's now a concept of splitting chunks. So Webpack's default behavior is to have a maximum size that a given JavaScript file should be and to split them and spread them out so that they progressively load and the application progressively enhances. But you can do a lot to specify this behavior. In this case, we have specified that our vendor chunk consists not of everything
James,
in the node
James.
modules.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, James. You're not sharing your screen yet, so just want to be able
What?
to follow if that was your.
I said
Yep.
click here to start sharing the screen. All right, how are we looking? We got a little code there?
There we go. Thank you, sir.
All right, I am outstanding at demo. So the Webpack config used to have something called a Commons chunk plugin in it, which is just a specification that says everything that's shared between the entry points, dump them in a Commons chunk. The vendor files, everything that more than one chunk uses. So the CMS page and the category page, if they both use feather icons goes in the vendor chunk. Webpack 4 comes at it from the opposite side. There's a concept of splitting chunks that is right out of the box something Webpack tries to do. It makes small bits of JavaScript that progressively load. The only way that we've configured it here is by creating a vendor chunk consisting of a few core libraries by matching against a path in our node modules, calling it vendor. And those libraries happen to be here. So you can actually fine-tune in the same way that you could the Commons chunk plugin, but somewhat in the opposite direction. What results in this configuration is, let's see, I'm probably going to have to generate a full build in order for that to take place, but I'll move around here in Venia so you can see that the root component for category comes in, and it's just another couple of kilobytes. And then the root component for product comes in, just another couple of kilobytes. We get a little bit of extra functionality with cart. That should have worked. Oh, you know what? That's because it's a skirt, and it's we can't do bottoms, guys. No bottoms. We'll get there. Hey, all right. And now the shopping cart and the category and the checkout systems are right now, as you can see, not loading extra JavaScript. So there is more opportunity for enhancements and for efficiency here. Right now, we just divide up root components with our plugin. But the more dynamic imports we use, the more automatically these things get separated into chunks. So in your code, when you are sitting in minicart, this import causes Webpack to split up a chunk, and our configuration is not doing it properly, so we're going to continue to fine-tune it. So already you can see that this 156 kilobytes with a bunch of load up front can shrink more and more and more as we continue to tune. So there is a whole lot of runway for us to gain speed. It was a big upgrade, and there is an upcoming Babel 7 upgrade that we probably want to do. And what I would hope for is that we have a compare and contrast much like this, where we do before and after, and we show the difference in bundle size, performance, and build time. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I can't underscore the importance of the performance benefits here for even the small upgrade, so appreciate your help on that one. So good stuff.
Of course.
Good. So, again, what was originally intended to be a fairly light demo based on all the great work that we're pulling together. I think we got into to some really good depths on Webpack 4 and some really key enablers here. And so, again, that really is it for this demo. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover? Any questions, comments before we wrap it up? All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you again for everybody's help. We'll continue with Sprint 30 to close things out. But as always, if you have any questions, comments, or considerations, you know where to find us. So have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. We'll talk soon.
Thank you very much for coming, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.